Experts in the Loop podcast. I am here with Stephen Colman of Stratum Labs. Stephen, welcome. Thanks very much for joining us.
G'day.
Good to see you, man. We've done a few events together, online and in person. We are waiting for my co-host. He's going to join us soon. That is Chris. So if you are wondering where's Chris, he's on his way. Through the wonders of technology, we're coming to you live. I'm here in Sydney. Stephen, are you down in Melbourne or are you traveling at the moment?
Down in windy Melbourne, yeah.
Oh, windy. What's going on down there?
Not sure.
Okay, no, fair enough. Have you had much travels yourself? Are you just doing a lot of stuff locally, or are you?
A little bit stuff interstate. We're certainly finding post-COVID clients are very happy to do a bit of stuff remote, which is good. But from an events perspective, there's been a bit of stuff happening in Adelaide recently. We've got some Sydney travel coming up in the next couple of weeks, so we'll certainly catch up for a beer when I'm in town there. But trying to keep it local while it's cold and miserable down here in Melbourne.
Well, here's your shout out to folks that are out there that if you're watching and in one of those cities, we'll certainly catch up and try to do something live. We did a live event for the Australian Blockchain and AI Network in Melbourne a few weeks ago, and if you want to catch up with Stephen, certainly worth it. But before we go any deeper, and people were wondering who's this Stephen character, and we can show a bit more about what you're doing. We've got your company here, Stratum Labs, and certainly keen to learn more about that. But before we dive in deeper, and just back to you, Stephen, who are you? Why are you doing what you're doing? What's your background?
It's a very good question. So I'm a CEO and founder of Stratum Labs. So we've built I guess you'd call us a consultancy, but we're sort of a forward deployed engineering team looking to help organisations understand more and embed AI into how they build their business. My background, so prior to doing that, about 20 years in technology roles, predominantly in large corporate environments and the big financial service businesses, bit of NAB in strategy there, AMP, MLC, QBE, a few other three-letter financial service firms. And then the last sort of decade or so, more into a consultant, sort of technology consultant, strategy consultant, UX, humans and design consultancy through there. And most recently, before kicking off Stratum Labs, spent 4 years working with DLA Piper, the sort of global law firm. They started to see their business starting to get disrupted by the sort of big four consultancies coming in there and setting up law practices to go and chip off a bit of the work that would traditionally go from the lawyers to someone else to do the implementation work. So they decided to do the same thing and actually build a consultancy practice within their law firm there. So very interesting being able to build something from the ground up, both here and in the UK for that business. And I led the technology practice for that. So for an M&A transaction, for example, the lawyers would come in, help support the sort of deal stuff. And then when it came to day one and actually merging those businesses, we'd come in and support the post-merge integration and the how do we get the technology systems talking to each other and all those bits and pieces. So interesting path through there. And then we really saw that AI push happening pretty early on, post sort of GPT-3 coming through, and we started doing a lot of work with our clients in the law firm around what was the possibilities here. But what I found personally, working with clients who are sort of thinking about you as a law firm, your reason for going to the lawyers is to reduce the risk, and some of this AI stuff can certainly initially increase the risk. So our view was we needed to actually set Link up as a standalone entity to help clients do more in this space. So that's the genesis of Stratum. It's been going for about 9 months, and we're growing the business quite rapidly in that 9 months, and we've got some exciting sort of changes happening over the next couple of months, which will continue on that growth pathway, hopefully.
Fantastic. And I've got my co-host back here. Chris, welcome to the show.
How are we?
Well, mate, we just got a bit of background on Stephen and, the work that he's done especially, I think, and you and I really resonated there, Stephen, and whilst Chris and I, we see many industries, and I work at a law firm that, we're building stuff internally as we plenty of times discussed, but then also doing stuff for clients. It is interesting because it's this new tech and it's this new type of risk. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways there. It's not just, hey, plug it in, say we're doing it, we get the marketing and sales uplift, and then we get like all the benefits. It's like, no, this is a new type of surface risk that you need to understand. And Chris and I are seeing that in the AI governance space as well. What do you do then with all of that? Like, because it is this new type of risk, is there a way that you work with clients hand in hand to actually make it easier to just really navigate that?
Yeah, I think it's a massive challenge for any organisations going into that. You know, in particular for law firms, we do a lot of work with law firms and helping them really just get started and understand, you know, what the opportunity is and what it means for the organisation. And there's almost a paralysis around the fear and the risk that comes with some of this stuff, and a desire to, maybe we don't want to be the first movers. Let's see what our competitors are doing and try and work it out there. But we've really seen in the last 6 months, the desire and the need to move and actually get some runs on the board is increasing. So there is that kind of weighing of what's the risk versus the benefit is starting to become the conversation through there. And our guidance is, you know, don't try and boil the ocean and do everything. Start with what's the pragmatic, safe way that you can start experimenting with this capability before you expose all your clients' data and do big bang and everything else. It's really getting organisations up to the starting plate, and that's through, you know, let's absolutely build the policy and the governance layer through there, but let's quickly just get your team onto the tools and experimenting with this stuff in a way that's not going to increase your risk surface of the organisation, and certainly not put your clients or your team at risk through there. And once they get moving, then the comfort starts to increase. Then the other partners who may have been reluctant to experiment through there start to see some of the benefit. But it's a marathon, not a sprint, in how you get organisations to think about this stuff. So that's certainly what we're learning at the moment with the way that we're engaging.
Love it. Chris, thoughts on that? Because like you face a lot of that similar sort of stuff in the engagements you've got going on.
Yeah, very much so. I think like I was going to ask the question kind of in line with what my thinking is at around the actual getting companies in general to take that first step and exploring with the tools. Like, what type of tools are you finding help with that initial step in that roadmap, particularly for a company that might not be tech mature in general?
Yeah, I think it's less about the tools. It's more about sort of the strategic intent of the organisation. And what we do find is actually a lot of organisations are starting with the tools. So I'll talk about law firms specifically because of the topic today, but this is pretty much across the board with organisations there. Oh no, we're doing AI. We've rolled out Copilot licenses to half the team and off we go. And not really extracting really any benefit out of that, and not strategically thinking about, well, why have we rolled out these licenses to everyone? So sitting down with the right team and going, well, what are you actually trying to achieve with AI? Don't start, you know, is Claude or ChatGPT the right tool, or should I buy all these Harvey subscriptions? What are you actually trying to achieve or change with the organisation? It's very hard for people to really get their grasp around what are we sort of seeking to lift or improve as a result of putting this stuff through there. So we spend an inordinate amount of time talking about the whys of what are you doing here? Why are you looking to engage Stratum to go and help with this stuff? Why do you think AI is an opportunity here? Why are there challenges with the current ways you're doing things? And once you unpick a lot of that stuff, then you can start to make the bridge of, well, here's a strategy, here's the solutions, here's the actual tooling that you might want to go and choose for the organisation. So it's a lot of those conversations up front. It's building the coalition of the willing within the organisation who's saying, yeah, this sounds reasonable. Yes, I'm comfortable with doing that first baby steps into maybe increasing the level of license you've got within the business. Maybe it's introducing a new tool. Maybe it's letting customers know or clients know that you're potentially going to be using this stuff with them. It's just getting that journey started. That's the really key thing at the moment, because we're only scratching the surface for what AI is going to be doing across organisations over the next couple of years. And the point I continue to make whenever I have these conversations is there really isn't an enterprise solution for AI from the frontier labs right now. So we don't see a really built for enterprise solution from Anthropic or OpenAI. Microsoft sort of got one because it's got its incumbency within the data layer and the governance layer already there, but they're kind of slapping the AI on the top of it. But we work very closely with some of the Anthropic team, and we've not quite line of sight into what's going on, but we know that there is a massive push from the Frontier Labs into building those enterprise AI tools. So our conversation with clients is just get your foundations in place, because next year when the big stuff comes through, you're going to have to move quickly to start to adopt that, and you don't want to be starting from sort of ground zero as that occurs.
For me, that hit the nail on the head in terms of where my thinking was at. And like, I think one of the key things I saw recently was, and we were talking with the company, they had recently brought on Claude. And like, yeah, we're now an AI business. And you're like, all right, cool. Let's chat about where are the wins, where are the gains? What is your goal? Like their goal is, we want to get ourselves out of the BAU so we can spend more time in the market, right? Having conversations, winning more deals. You're like, great. So you've integrated Claude. You're saying that you've started that journey. Have you seen that change? And every time, every company they've talked to, it's been like, oh, not really. No, we're still doing we're still there doing the BAU stuff. It's like, that's right. Because all you've done is slapped something over the top, and you may have sped up a couple of small processes like writing an email or finding a product, but you're not reaping the benefits of what real AI can do for your organization. And that's because you have, like you said, you've slapped a tool on top. You haven't thought about that longer plan on how do we automate that process to stop me from having to do it so I can get out there and do the things I want to do. Being very vague intentionally, because I don't want to put
there's plenty of examples of the type of stuff that we can do here in Stratum Labs does for clients. But the reason we brought you on, Stephen, is because of the nature. I want to deep dive into a specific industry, and it's an industry you and I are close to. Chris is getting closer to through the work that we get to do together. But it's legal. And the legal industry, as much as I was never involved in it, my fiance is a lawyer, that's great. I was never really too much involved in that space apart from hearing about it. And being in blockchain and digital assets before that is a space, because of all the legislations that are being worked out. I've never seen so many lawyers in a room as I have when I go to like blockchain meetings and stuff. But it is the fastest, I think, when it comes to what is the adoption and use. And you mentioned it before, and I want you to explain this. It's a 2-speed economy that you're seeing here in legal AI. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it is the fastest adoption, but you also look at, I've got a lovely chart I put in my keynotes around the industries being disrupted by AI, and it's sort of legal is up the top and professional services of consulting, where I come from, down the bottom there. So I think that is a natural response to the impact that this technology is going to have across that sector through there. But yeah, it certainly is a 2-speed economy. There are people who see that chart and go, oh shit, we've got to do something about our business, otherwise we're in for massive pain here. Or there is, and it is almost a 50-50 split with the organisations we're speaking with. It is this is too hard, this is really scary, this is going to increase our risk, this is going to cost a lot of money, and we're better just to go and put our heads in the sand and wait to see how it plays out. And, if in 12 months we have to go and invest, then we can make a decision there. So breaking through some of that resistance is tricky, but certainly those early adopters who have seen the light and are going through now, we're starting to see that investment start to come through. We're obviously seeing I was in a meeting with a vendor yesterday who's got the AI law landscape with logos that you can barely kind of make out because there's so many of them on the page now. So it is a bit of a gold rush for those who are trying to build the picks during the gold rush through there. I would suspect of those logos, 20% will remain within 2 or 3 years' time. And there's obviously a couple that are gaining traction and starting to get incumbency within organisations now. The Harveys and the Lagoras are coming through there as well. So yeah, where you're seeing that investment, that 2-speed economy of firms that are investing, it's we see the opportunity, we understand it, we believe this is existential. We're happy to the easy solution, which I'm not sure is the right solution yet. The easy solution is we'll go and buy a Harvey or a Lagora and we'll push out those licenses to the team. without, again, thinking about strategically what are we trying to achieve by doing this through there. And then what we're seeing as a result of that, and I think this is the interesting, to your point before around we've deployed these tools and people are proofreading their emails, they're getting a bit more productive in what they're doing, but it's not hitting the bottom line for the firm. So individually, I think people are finding better, more enjoyable ways to deliver their work more efficiently, more effectively. But it's not necessarily reducing client billings, and it's not necessarily reducing the overarching cost for the organisation through there. So for those firms that are experimenting, getting in there, doing some investment, the question they'll be trying to quantify after doing their initial 12 months, which is where the period went for most firms at the moment, is where's the ROI in this? Like, what are we actually getting out the back end? And I think there's going to be some interesting questions of, well, we've just spent $500,000 on Harvey licenses. We haven't reduced the cost lever or increased the revenue lever for the organisation. What's going on there?
Oh, and I guess, this is the thing when it comes to the ROI, the sugar hit has worn off. And it's like, it's not enough to just be saying that you're doing it. It has to be, well, what is it delivering? Is it reducing the cost of us to deliver this because we're on a fixed fee, for example? And that's just something that many industries face. How do you increase that margin? Where does AI help there? But also, like, is it creating new types of things that you now have to check? Sure, it's automating this, but the amount of work that you have to put into doing the checking. So unless you're building things or using tools that make checking the outputs easy, then it's going to be a problem, right? So it's fascinating seeing how fast it's moving in the legal space. And it's only when you're really close to a problem, like Chris, you know this from building your own kind of tools. Unless you're really close to a problem, you're not going to see the things, the unknown unknowns, right? So evaluation for me has been a really big thing. Do you want to add something to that? Yeah,
I was gonna say there's also an issue that's popping up, which is the ability for humans to move or just like consider more of what is going on when you come to integrating these tools. So imagine you integrate this platform, you find that you're scraping off hours in a day now because you've been able to automate it, or it's summarizing, it's doing these tools in front of it. That person then needs to be able to go, okay, I have an hour free. What else can I now do, which is going to enable me to get that saving on top of it, right? Yep. Can I take on a new client, or is your mental capacity already at this max? Even though I'm saving an hour, I still don't have the mental capability to take on another customer because that's something else I need to think about in the day. And that is also a limitation of what these tools are able to save you. It's like, yeah, cool. Maybe I'm just sitting back and I can have a coffee now. Is that more of an important value for an individual versus an enterprise where it's like, well, no, we've saved you 10 hours. We expect you to be doing another project, which is going to increase that revenue into the business or add more value to the client, which is then for increasing that revenue. And if those
all these
human activities don't occur, that ROI doesn't get improved.
You get to ask those questions now. That's the thing.
Exactly.
And this is the big challenge with AI in isolation or tooling in isolation of if you're not thinking about what's your operating model for the organization, if you're not thinking of what's the structure you've got for your people and the teams and the way work works, not thinking about your incentive structure around how people are going to be remunerated there. There's a lot. I always get asked, well, what does this mean for billings? We're on a timesheet based system. If we can get the job done quicker, that just means we've got less that we can go and bill the client for. So we don't want to go and do that. And I've had conversations where we need to go and include a technology cost for all of our clients in the work that we're delivering, which I think is the absolute worst thing you could possibly do. Not only are you saying AI did the work for you, but we're going to charge you extra because AI did the work for you. So, and this is why I think we're going to start to see, and we are seeing the emergence now of the AI native law firm that's built from the ground up, that doesn't have all this legacy around the old ways of working, but is thinking more around, it's fixed cost, outcome-based sort of billing through their teams are structured in a very different way, where previously you may have a partner and a number of senior associates and associates doing the heavy lifting. You've now got a partner and 5 or 6 different agents doing various things, and the partner's focus is, I'm just the interface between the machine and the client through there, and is doing a far larger remit than they would have previously done. But it's very hard to transform a business that's been, especially a larger size, scale business that's been doing things in the old ways into the new way. So I think what we will see, and what we're starting to see now, is these AI native law firms start to get stood up. There's a lot of PE and venture money that's coming into this space going, we think this is going to be massively disrupted. So we're very happy to go and take, a couple of very cluey technology, AI native partners out. We'll give them some money. We'll build the technology stack from the ground up around the best workflows, and we'll push that out to the market. And that's going to be the real sort of competitive force, I think, that drives some of the changes of what traditional firms do over the next couple of years.
It's really interesting because I think, you've got two things. So I'll just share a screen here. This is something where you can see, so we built this, you've seen this, Stephen, and you feature it, and we'll get back to that later on. But this is just some of the bigger vendors, the ones that are specializing in the tooling, the Harveys, Lagoras, but you've got CoCounsel, Lexus, Copilot even doing stuff, and some of these other names here. Then you've also got there's the Australian scene where we've got a few that are building in this space as well. Leap, which is a practice management tool, but for full disclosure, we're moving to Leap ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also all these others that are bringing AI into their systems and either focusing on a subsection of, Mary doing chronologies and fact management, and others, and even LawPath, which was, a quasi, they are in that space of being a software provider, but then also a firm. But as you mentioned, there are these firms that are being stood up that they are AI native. They're not law firm and then AI over the top, but they are AI native from the beginning. So what do you think ends up happening there when the tech companies, they're coming in with tech first and they're trying to find a way to, change how legal work is done, delivered to clients, is managed, is the whole end-to-end legal kind of for whatever kind of division of law that you're in ends up getting changed. How do they go about doing that? Who wins in a face-off like this?
Yeah, look, I'm not a lawyer. Like you, Mark, my wife is a lawyer. I love to go and tell her that I'm a lawyer because I work for a law firm, but it's not quite the case. But I've seen lawyers that I previously worked with who were doing good billings and good fee earners for the organisation, with the team of associates and support behind them, go, my job is really just as a rainmaker at this stage in my career. I've got good client relationships. I understand at a really deep level the domain and the practice of law that I'm in. I'll have the client relationships. I'll get the work in. I'll do the sort of approval that the associates are drafting for me and making sure things are robust and back to the client. But I'm actually not really in the weeds of stuff anymore. And they've seen the light of gone, well, I can build some codify what I go and do. I've got a good precedent library. I've got everything I need to actually just deliver these services without a lot of the back office and expensive support that actually a lot of my sort of fee earning capacity has to go and provide. So why wouldn't I just go out myself or find three other people to go out myself, continue with those relationships, continue to be, the human in the loop of any profession, maybe surgeons, but we'll see how robotics plays out there. But you absolutely want a human in the loop with this stuff. You do not want to, it's a safety mechanism for people who are going through a risky process of, yes, someone who understands this in a great level of detail is going to give me confidence in doing the right thing. So you'll continue to need to have that human in the loop element, but being able to really take a lot of that heavy lifting from a back end and increase the efficiency. And then even if I decrease my fees by 30% to the clients and still give them an excellent product that I can put my name to and I'm confident with, that's sort of a win-win that you can't do in a larger firm. So I think we're really going to see a bit of an exodus, maybe not right at the top end of the town, because there's always going to be a place for those really top end prestige big law practices through there. But that middle, between the 2 or 3 person, up to a dozen sort of partner small firms who are building AI native workflows behind them, the middle will start to get really reduced down, and I think competed with quite heavily by these more efficient, more effective, but still very relationship-based firms who have worked out how to go and leverage AI to the full potential.
I think it's going to be interesting because these types of things, you never had these kind of crunch moments or these periods of transition unless there's a tech kind of shift. You know, throughout history, it's always been that. And whether it's been, you know, the automated lights turning off in the room here or something
Actually
else.
didn't notice.
Happened on my end. All good. Maybe I've got to move around. But yeah, it is interesting the shift that is like happening there. But do you think that the playbook changes whether it is a law firm that, you know, is, the legal industry? Because I think there's some core tenets that still remain the same. You have to evaluate the outputs of these things. You have to figure out, like, where does the human in the loop go? You have to figure out, because we're lucky enough, and, you know, with the tyranny of distance that we've got in Australia, we can develop, but we have to think about PII, personally identifiable information, and how to handle that, and the different methods and reliability factors for handling that sort of thing. So there's all of these like factors, and, you know, we've got these great Lego blocks in place. How do you think, you know, legal is facing this right now, and we're tackling that? Are you applying some of this thinking to other industries that you get involved in? And Chris, I want to hear from you as well on that. But Stephen, do you think it's the same? You know, what's going on in legal whilst it's accelerating in terms of AI? Do you think a lot of those patterns are things that other industries need to face as well?
Yeah, I think, you know, we do the sort of foundational building blocks for helping organisations put in AI, and one of those main foundational blocks across all industries we're working with is how do you create the system of record, or the, you know, the company brain for that organisation. So all these organisations have this massive amount of data. You know, law firms have previous work they've delivered and their precedents, and then, you know, their knowledge that sits around there. Construction firms got all the contracts that's done previously, and all the vendors, supply agreements, all that knowledge. So there's these great swathes of knowledge across all organisations and all sectors, and helping them move that. And it's all unstructured data, you know. It's all in SharePoints or written down somewhere, and being able to actually sort of put the reins on that and actually get that in a way that it's machine readable and you can start to plug into the ecosystem. That's almost the first piece of work we have to do with every single firm. So that's going to be, there will be every organisation seeking to do that in one way, shape or form, which is why Microsoft has a bit of a head start at the moment, because people have been sticking stuff into SharePoint and they haven't quite got it right yet, but they've got a head start in the way they're going to go and do that. So certainly finding, how do you build that company brain? How do you create the, you know, the institutional knowledge around what's going on there as a starting point? And then how do you think about, well, once you've now got that asset across the organisation, how are you connecting that into a safe way? Because you mentioned PII and data risk is a key concern. I think we may have seen McKinsey created their sort of internal LLM. They fed all of their background work over the last 20, 30 years into, so incredibly rich database, and then expose some of the endpoints via MCP that the public could just get into. And suddenly, and it actually was a security firm that found the hole, and they've sort of made their posts around it. But, you know, these are the sort of things that I just wouldn't be thinking about for an organisation in the past, that we have to be building alongside all the sexy, innovative stuff that's going to help the workflows through there. So, yeah, there's a whole value chain of stuff that every organisation is going to have to go through. That, you know, we're here to go and support, and I think we'll start to see more and more of an industry popping up around there. We're seeing the frontier labs are now pulling together their own FDE capabilities. You've got the OpenAI's got the deployment company, Anthropic's now pushing their partnership network. So you will see this big shift around what are the things that organisations need to address this, and what are the organisations that are popping up to fill the gap through there over the next couple of years.
Fantastic. Chris, what do you think about that? Like, what are you seeing in your line of work?
It's exactly the same thing. I've, over the last I would say, month, I've been speaking with everything from private equity companies to pharmaceutical companies to manufacturing companies, helping them on these exact same journeys, SaaS businesses, and every single one of them, like without a doubt, every single one of them comes back to like some foundational setup that is required before they can even take leaps and bounds. And it's usually in kind of three kind of categories. It's data being the one, as you highlighted, Stephen. It's just a huge portion of it is setting up that infrastructure so that it is machine readable. It's also scattered systems, so they might have 3 or 4, 5 plus different products across their business that are all doing different things in different places, and none of them are talking to each other. And then usually then it comes down to education and understanding, so that desire for adoption. So if you are going to be setting up this infrastructure, setting up this way of working in an AI place, they have to have a need to be able to want it, or desire to be able to want to utilize it. If you have people who are just like, no, I'm comfortable using my Excel sheets, instantly, even if you set up that infrastructure, those people are going to go off and still maintain their own work in their own environments, which then stops feeding, this new system that you've set up for learning capabilities. So culture, you could almost put it under. So they seem to be the three big things that are popping up within the sort of conversations, and consistently throughout all of them.
Well, where do you guys see self-hosting as sort of something that's going to either increase in popularity or just not be a reasonable option for organizations because of the compute you need?
Trade-offs. It all comes down to trade-offs, because we've considered that as well. So put it this way, I've done a lot of testing of these open source models. And why? Because sure, you might be able to use, and I just use the Anthropic side, and obviously OpenAI has come out with their Solterra, Luna kind of models, but Haiku, I don't even know if those are the right names, but anyway, like Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus, the typical kind of models that you have, really low Haiku, very cheap, good for doing things like some very simplistic type tasks, but I would never use it, just from all the evals that I've done, to reliably and accurately get case citations out of a document that you've fed it, and reliably, recite those things. Would never do that. I'll use Sonnet for that because it's far more reliable. Why? Because I've tested it. And then, it's more expensive to use Opus for those things. Now, why the open source ones is because testing on those, like if you can set it up the right way via a virtual private server on Amazon, or getting not necessarily Mac Mini, but just some hardware, your own server and on premise, it's a cost thing. And guess what? You can get the AI to help you figure out where the cost levers are at a certain point. Like right now, there's even a middle ground between getting your own virtual private server and getting to use the open source models. Something that came out a few weeks ago, Chris, you remember this, GLM 5.2, which was supposed to be as good as Opus 4.8, but it's open source. There are different providers where you pay a fraction of the fees. I'm paying, for example, Sonnet, just below Sonnet type costs, with a provider called Fireworks, to be able to use GLM 5.2, so an equivalent kind of Opus 4.8. And so whether you're setting up your own, you're paying for it, you're not paying for it and just leaving things as they are, it depends on risk of where the data goes and how much it costs. That's what I'm seeing. What about you, Chris?
I was going to say, in terms of capability, it's getting to a point where that difference between what's capable on these cloud-based services versus what you can do locally, like that gap is slowly shrinking. They're always going to have a few thieves ahead because there's bigger money there than using open source. But it comes back to one of the original points we raised, which is about ROI and I guess your ability to even then maintain it if you are going to do it locally. It's a problem if you have something that's locally and you're doing self-hosted, you're having to maintain the costs of that infrastructure. You're having to maintain ensuring that the tools that are on there are kept up to date, kept secure, that when the new model comes out for that particular open source model, you're having to update that model yourself and then testing it, ensuring that it's still working and getting the same outcome. So there's a lot of overhead that comes with maintaining your own self-hosted environment. So whether you pay someone else to do it, but then if you're paying someone else to do it, why didn't you go with using these existing SaaS tools in the first place? Because they will provide all of those services for free. They maintain it, they ensure it's working,
and speed.
and speed is also part of it. So there is a balance. There is like if you're a small company and you're a small company and you have the time to maintain it, that's probably going to be a great option because you get to do and test and learn and adapt. Whereas you start going to that enterprise level where the scale is and things are moving at a different speed, it just sometimes makes more sense that and you need the security as another part of it, to have cloud-based solutions or existing SaaS product solutions. Like a report came out from BCG just recently where talking about how people moving to these self-building environments is actually creating more problems than it would be if you just use the stuff that is off the shelf. And it comes back to maintenance, it comes back to cost, it comes back to speed and adaptability within the environment. You don't always need to do things yourself. These tools exist and they exist for a reason.
What about you? Stephen, what are you kind of seeing? And what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, one of the big challenges is we've never been in a technology space that's moved so quickly. And for even the most sort of on the edge IT manager at even a medium large size firm, it's impossible to keep up with everything that's going on. So you make a technology decision and it's changed a day later. So it's very tricky to sort of back the right horse and making a big investment like, we want to own the inference and then have all the infrastructure in-house and do all that stuff. Very hard to get a business case up and running for that because things will shift and change so quickly. Whether that hockey stick continues forever and ever, and it's just like, I drink from the fire hose and check Twitter every morning and there's a new model came out. Kimi 3 came out last night. That's apparently Fable 5 performance for an open source model. Looks like a distilled model from Anthropic, by the way, but no surprises there. But so I think that architecture choice is really challenging for most organizations. I actually think I would sort of go the opposite of what you said, Chris, around maybe small organizations can muck around with it, but larger organizations it's safer to go cloud. I actually think it's the large organizations with the really big token bills who'll go, actually, it makes sense for us to go self-hosted, maybe even on-prem around this because our costs, our Anthropic API costs, just so crazy through there. I think that the shift around, so the easy answer is like don't buy hardware that's going to be out of date 3 months later now. Like you've got to be sensible, especially as you're establishing your environment. I think over time, as maybe things level out, and I think we're almost starting to see that leveling off coming through now, that we'll start to get good enough intelligence for, we've sort of worked out the workflows that we're going to be trying to agentically automate or streamline through there. We've found a model that sort of, sonnet quality level might be good enough for the foreseeable future for how we do the contract intake workflow, whatever it might be. And then organizations will be able to say, actually, we don't want to keep trying new things. We're just going to go and bake this in. This should be fine for 3 years. We're not going to ignore any noise that was coming out. We'll continue to give access to frontier stuff for sort of testing and stuff through there. But I think that will then start to be, okay, well now, if we know this is good enough, and if we know we can buy some servers or buy some sort of compute and have that model in there, and it's going to be fractions of what we pay for the really cutting edge stuff, and it's good enough, that will help guide the decision around there a bit. I think for law firms in particular, data sovereignty and residency and protection is really important and actually legally enforceable across what they do. So getting that right is incredibly important through there. So, and this is sort of the attraction of buying a tool like Harvey. They tick, tick, tick. Yes, we've gone through that with 10 other law firms, so you're not going to get fired for buying IBM. But as the saying goes. I do think over time we'll see people wanting to have control over their own stack. Or actually, the counterpoint to that is it will get so cheap from a cloud perspective that people just won't care, and that's just the way you go.
Especially as the models get more intelligent, right? And the other, to add to that, like the more mature businesses will benefit from model choice, where they have the capabilities or the understanding to understand context around what is good for what. If someone passes does a certain activity, automatically the systems that they're utilizing go, great, you're just doing some translated stuff. I'm going to pass you through one of the free local models because all we're doing is summarizing an email or summarize an article, versus the developer putting in something that's building and that goes, no, you obviously don't want that cheaper model. I need to push you into utilizing a fable-based model or something, whatever it work. But that model context is going to be so much more important as we continue to move forward and things get more and more expensive.
Can we dive into something, because you know this space really well, Stephen, and I want to do what I don't see other podcasts do this enough. And like, this is not going to, we're not going to do a show and tell. We can do that at a later stage here. I do have stuff prepped, but I'm like, no, where the conversations are going, let's just talk. But let's get specific, okay? Choosing the right model is one thing, but in terms of a workflow, let's talk about a workflow that you might face as a young lawyer looking at using various tools, whether it is the aforementioned Harvey's, Lagora's, etc. And you write something. Now, whether your prompt is the right thing, whether you've fed it the right kind of context, that's let's just assume that information. It comes out and it's got some hallucinations. And now you start to think, well, what if I could just build this thing on my own? I've seen what Chris and Mark and Stephen have spoken about. I see what...
How can it be?
How can it be? I see legal quants community focusing on building things in the LinkedIn kind of world and showing that. How hard can it be? And then they get to things like, okay, now I'll talk about like what I think it would be great to see. I'd love to hear your opinion on some of this, but imagine that you could build something where when it starts to answer things, it doesn't actually just give you a black box. It's actually going and saying, I'm going to answer this. You've got this problem. Here is this sub question. Here are these sub problems. I've broken it down into. I'm going to go retrieve the answer for that. I'm going to look up a citation, and it's visible to you where you can go, hang on, that citation doesn't look right. So I'm going to check that. Or maybe it's even smarter because the system is actually flagging itself that something should be reviewed. What do you think about systems that do that? Because I think that that's not just valuable for law, and we need to do it legally to make sure that we're doing the right things with the AI. But what do you think about that process? What else do you kind of look at when it comes to this?
So I'll sort of talk more generally around how I think lawyers are thinking about this as a workflow challenge and the tooling that's coming up around there at the moment. So I think the sort of stuff we see with like legal quants, and there's all these people doing these amazing things, and this incredible thing I built, and the whole practice is using it now, and it's great, and this has revolutionized the way we're working. I haven't seen any of those solutions really live in production. I've seen some really good LinkedIn posts around them, but I haven't actually seen it get to that next step. It reminds me a lot of the OpenClaw hype from the start of the year. Like, everyone on LinkedIn's got these incredible personal assistants that they've connected into everything, and they no longer have to answer their emails, and this thing's made a $10 million business by itself over here, and you actually sort of pick into it, and someone's selling a course behind the whole thing through there. So I think that there is a huge risk from people who are, on the side of their day job, trying to reinvent the way that their law or their workflows are delivered through there, where actually starting off with some of the hygiene factor stuff around how do you get some really good codified skills of, within Claude or within Copilot, of when you look through anything you're drafting, I want you to do an AI slop check over the front so we can make sure we're getting rid of all that coming out through. So the really simple sort of basic stuff, I think, is actually the stuff that's giving people the highest effectiveness and efficiency in the way they do stuff. Then, of course, there's guys like you who are actually, tasked from an organizational level to think about how do we reinvent the way that we're doing things, going through the right process, strategically aligned around what they're doing, and actually pushing, testing, iterating at an organizational level. I think that's where you get the real benefits from a business perspective through there. But from individuals who are sort of just trying to get the best out of the tooling, it's get the foundational stuff right through there. Make sure you're not. The other big thing for lawyers or really any professionals at the moment is, and especially the junior resources in the team that are coming through. It's not having the belief that you can just outsource your skill and your ability to the machine and you're going to get good work out of it. Like, we are advising clients to get quite aggressive around calling out slop. You get an email that's been AI generated. You get a pack that's been there. Like you need to call it out, even though you can't always be certain. But I think we're all starting to get that kind of taste of what AI generated content looks like. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be using this stuff within our jobs, but if we give over the task and we're not being that human in the loop for what's actually coming out the other side of it, that's where we're going to have real challenges around adoption and actually getting permission to use that. Clients now, their radars are up around whether they're paying you good money to go and do good work. And if they get something they feel has just been pumped out of Claude and they could have done it themselves, they won't come back for a second round. So
Wikipedia put up this signs of AI writing sort of thing. And it's
copy paste, insert into MD file, ensure this is now run across all my work.
Yeah.
Yes,
immediate skill and should be updated as it goes.
So well worth there if you want to sound more human, folk, or if you want your AI bots to sound more human. But I think you're absolutely right. Like the tells are there, and if we start calling it out now, if it's a client, you don't want to necessarily like push that kind of stuff. You can call it out more gracefully or work with them more gracefully, right? But like within the people that you're friendly enough to be able to call this out, I think calling it out pushes us to a higher level of needing to make things better. But interesting on that note, the clients are using AI in part of what they do. Now, not just legal, many other spaces, but it means that there is a new sort of language that's evolving of like, how do we actually engage when we see something that maybe it's slop in terms of what's being created, so that you can help correct. Interestingly, maybe it creates more work. And I've seen that argument, actually be brought to the table, because when clients create more, create this kind of stuff, and it is like, it's got a lot of missing pieces. It just means more work for whether it's lawyers or others to have to go through. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's a huge one for lawyers at the moment, because 12 months, 2 years ago, you'd get an email saying, hey, would you mind reviewing this contract for me? And you'd go through and you do your review and everything else. Now you'll get hey, I've gone through this contract. I found these 10 different issues with it. There's some stuff around here, and it's all been passed through a large language model before it's come across there. And often it's veered off course because it hasn't really thought about the complexities of what's going on. And it's, it is not a lawyer to go and do that work, or they've used a very sort of low power model to actually get the response there. So not only does the lawyer have to go through and actually do that full review of the document as they would have done normally, they've got to then respond to the individual dot points that are going through there. So I think there's a bit of a sort of client education piece around, absolutely go through and do a first sort of pass through there, just some stuff that we'll talk about and why we recommend the way you think about it, or find a way to go and bake that into the engagement with the client there as well. I think these are important things to think about. The other one that I think is interesting, and it's for lawyers in particular, but I think anyone who's in a client-facing professional services role, you should now expect that every single conversation you're having with a client is being recorded and being fed into a large language model. And that's particularly concerning for lawyers, because you're sort of held to account around what's going on within there, as opposed to being held for account on the actual advice you're providing at the back end. So it's a really brave new world around. And look, I record every conversation that I go into, because that's what's populating my corporate brain, and I can go and leverage that in the work that I'm producing later on. But it's happening with clients as well. So really thinking about how we deliver our services, how we engage with clients, how we sort of coach around the best way to engage to get the best work out of all parties, I think is a really important thing to be intentional about within your business.
I love it. I think that there's a lot of learnings here that people can have with all of this. But let's get back to some of the stuff that I do want to share. Like, first of all, people want to reach out. And by the way, I'm going to bring up actually some comments here that I've seen from the chat. So never done this before. So let's see what this looks like. Does this come up? There we go. Oh, hang on. I'll try it again. Yep, some comments per the chat here. So you've got Stratum Labs are huge. Yes. these guys do well, financial advice, talking about the database versus Excel thing, needing a better way to handle things. Thanks for that hit, Will. They don't necessarily go out looking for a product there. So to handle, yeah, I mean, people are wanting to use what's easiest for them, going back to that, and whether it's in legal or in stuff that you've been facing there, Chris, I think that's important. So, you know, is there anything that you reckon you guys want to like say to people that are watching this? I mean, apart from what's been said so far, like if someone asks you like what's some advice you'd want to give to folks that are you know, trying to understand better understand this space, because you've got a really great chart. I don't know if you can share your screen, maybe not on this one, we'll find it some other time, but of like the amount of people in the world versus how many are actually just using normal AI, ChatGPT, versus how many are building with it versus how many are doing this particular thing. I think it's so small that there's massive opportunities there. But yeah, what do you say, Stephen, when there's like people that come to you for advice, and then Chris after that you?
Yeah, so the consistent theme with everyone we're talking about in business land is we're not moving fast enough in this space. All of our competitors are doing way more. We're falling behind through there. We need to do something around it. And actually, the fact that we're having that conversation in the first place means you're actually more proactive than I think a lot of the people out there at the moment. So while there's a lot of noise, there's unlimited headlines in the AFR every week around all this stuff going on, and it feels like no other period in technology where things are just moving so quickly. Actually, everyone's still just trying to understand what's going on and get the starting blocks through there. So as we talked about at the start of this, just getting started, finding ways to start to provide a platform for safe experimentation for your team. That's all you need to do for the rest of the year. You know, have a strategic view about what AI means for your organization. Get something going on in the business, and then be ready to adjust as the market adjusts, as things start to really shift and change over the next 24 months is the key stuff through there. What you'll find is if you give your people permission to go and do things, and you know they're not sort of off in a corner trying to get a response out of Claude and then sending it through to a client, but we're actually just meeting once a month to say, tell us about all the good ways that you're using AI in the organization. You'll start to build the culture you need to actually execute on this shift as it starts to come through. It's those who are putting their head in the sand, not doing anything, think it's going to move over, that they're going to have some trouble through there. But yeah, there'll be plenty of time to go and shift as the technology change comes through. In particular, I think in 2027.
Love it. Chris, what do you kind of say to people that are?
I would repeat the exact same sentiment. So I won't re-instill what you've just said, because everything you've said, Stephen, is spot on. I think I'll just add one extra thing there is also that sometimes AI isn't the solution. So a lot of people, a lot of businesses, when they're coming into it, they're like, oh, everyone's using AI, I'm really, really scared. And it comes down, it's just a couple little systems problems that we might want to address first. And those systems problems will provide immense amount of relief on the organization and huge amounts of ROI if it's just properly looked at, properly strategically have the time invested to fix those system problems. And then it potentially opens up the doors to other opportunities around AI usage, etc. So it's more to say it's not always an AI problem why people are falling behind. It just, it comes back to what we were talking about before, that sometimes it's data foundations that are stopping you from doing the things that you want to do. And if you look at that from that perspective, you probably will realize, actually, we're not falling behind because of AI. We're falling behind because we just don't have the right strategy in place to take that next step. That's
Love
the only
it.
thing I'll add to it.
No, I love it. I would add to all of that and just say, have fun. One of the things that I'm doing is getting my team, the ones that I'm immediately surrounded by, to, and obviously all the lawyers and stuff and the activities we're doing there, but encouraging them to get to the tools, whether it's ChatGPT and OpenAI side, or it's Anthropic and Claude side, or even Google Gemini and others, and play around with not just the language models and going back and forth with it, but creating things with it, or asking for just a simple, interactive HTML page of something you are interested in. Ask it to give you better designs. Look up what others are doing in the line of work that you're in with marketing or whatever the other kind of functions are. What is it that others are doing from a simple Google search, and even asking the AI, and just going on that journey of discovery, but doing it alongside AI, I think has been a really fascinating kind of thing, because as you said there, Stephen, you build up that culture, and we need a lot of that kind of stuff going on here if we're going to transform things, right?
It's a people problem, not a technology problem, this stuff. The technology will almost take care of itself. If you get your people comfortable and excited about what the opportunity might be, as opposed to hesitant and resistant, everything else will fall into place. If you've got a technology problem, just ask Claude. Claude will give you the answer to it. You can't do the same thing with the humans in the business, unfortunately.
I think you've got to be prepared, and this is early stage AI, but even to this day, it's just that it's more sophisticated. So the problems become more sophisticated, and you've got to become a lot more resilient in trying something out or seeing something that AI has come up with and it's failed you, and then just continuing to persist, because eventually you will get to that right solution, given that the knowledge is there. There are very few problems, I think, that cannot be solved right now, here and now, with the tools that are there. It's just how persistent are you to discover and go back and forth with the machine to help get you to that. So yeah, Stephen, people want to reach out to you. How do they best do it? I'm going to bring Stratum back up on screen, but where do folks best find you if they want to have a chat?
Yep, website's there. Drop me a DM on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to reach out.
Fantastic. And looking forward to any kind of further talks you've got coming up. Make sure, folks, to follow Stephen. Obviously, follow Chris and I. If you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn or X, please do like, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you about more AI and getting it into the regulated spaces, doing the fun stuff and more soon. Chris, thank you so much. Stephen, thank you.